You are listening to the What a Word podcast, an interview-style podcast where guests bring their unique experiences and insight on culture, life's challenges, and faith. Each episode is seasoned with words which will inspire and encourage. Now here is your host, Ryan Sharp.
Good morning and welcome to another episode of the What a Word podcast. I am bringing just greetings from what seems to be like one of the coldest mornings ever. And I was just sharing with my guest how God indeed answers prayers early in the morning, because I woke up this morning with a boiler or furnace issue. And I am happy that it's up and running again, that sometimes we can't prepare for everything life throws at us, but I'm indeed thankful that even as early as it is this morning, that the man above heard my earnest cry and he answered by and by. But I'm indeed thankful for your support to the podcast. I have been thinking about ways I can reach back out to you, and one of the things I've thought about is many of you are looking for virtual career days. And as I've indicated in the past, my guests have a variety, they come from a variety of walks of life. Their career paths are different, their journeys are different. But I believe if you're looking for individuals who can share with your civic, religious, or your students, the What a Word podcast can be a resource. So if you need that type of help, please reach out to me at whatawordpodcast@gmail.com, or you can reach out to me on Instagram at whatawordpodcast and send me a message. And I'd be so happy to make available to your organization, your school, your church, some of the very wonderful guests who have come on to share from their journeys. I believe it would inspire your congregants, your audience, or your students and your faculty. And I'm hoping that you can make that resource available. This morning, I'm honored to have a friend of mine, a guest of mine, who is very impactful in her work. Her name is Dr. Sherian Joseph-Hislop. She's the Director of Special Education for Brooklyn North, where she provides strategic district level leadership to advance equitable, high quality services for students with disabilities across a diverse portfolio of schools. She is a mother and a wife, very impactful in her work, and I'm going to post her bio in the notes so you can learn more about her. She, notwithstanding her very busy schedule, offered to share from her journey with me. So I'm honored to have her on as a guest. Please join me in welcoming my guest, Dr. Hislop, to the What a Word podcast. Welcome, my friend.
Thank you for having me.
Oh man, I'm so honored. I was sharing with Dr. Hislop just what type of morning I had. And I'm indeed thankful for not only the way God answers prayer, but that He hears them, right? Because whenever life comes at us, He has this ability to set us at ease, not only because He's answered prayers in the past, and that gives us a lot of assurances that He'll come through again. But I had no idea when I was troubleshooting that it would work out, because even though I saw the instructions and I'm following it to a T, these are machines, these are appliances. But I prayed, and I'm indeed thankful that He answered prayers. And I had a really great day at church yesterday. And Dr. Hislop, I just want to ask you about, we're both from the same faith community. How was your worship experience this weekend?
Well, this weekend I actually did an online service with Pastor Snell. He's one of my favorite speakers, and I'm really inspired when I listen to his messages. And yesterday he spoke about I fight differently, and that topic resonated with me because it told me that when the battles come, I don't even have to get involved. I can just stand still and see God work. And that's what I'm taking with me this week, the approach to just stand still and see God work.
That's powerful, man. I fight differently. I'm going to sit with that for a while, but I want to get into your journey as well. I mentioned to listeners and viewers a little bit about your background. It's extensive, and we're going to get more into it in the time we have. I should mention to viewers and listeners that Dr. Hislop is also an author, and I'm going to highlight her new book in our conversation today. I should mention that uh, she came to my faith community a few times, and I only learned that she had a beautiful singing voice when I went to a service somewhere else. And I had no idea all this time that she really sang, and she sings very well. So there's a lot that I have to unpack about who she is and what she does and her gifting, because she's humble to a fault. And I want to just segue into the notion that we don't often find our purpose by accident. Share with listeners when your desire to be an educator was sparked in your spirit.
I remember when I just graduated from high school in Trinidad and Tobago, and it was actually one Saturday evening I was at AY, and the first elder called me outside and he said, Sister Cherry, that's how he called me. We need a teacher at the school, and this is an Adventist school. And would you be willing to do it? And I said, absolutely.
Mhm.
And that was my first exposure to working as an educator. I started in the SDA school in Tobago as an assistant teacher. And after 2 years, I developed a real love for educating young children. And I
Mhm.
proceeded to Caribbean Union College, which is now called USC,
Mhm.
and did my bachelor's degree in teacher training. But although I really loved education, I also had a passion for music. So I did minors in piano and voice because prior to going to school, I played at my church and I directed the choirs there and did lots of work with music. So I never wanted to put that aside, but I never felt it was lucrative enough for me to do it every day. So I went into education and I minored in piano and voice. And from there, I just kept working my way up. I took a contract from the Bahamian government and I taught piano and voice in the Bahamas for a couple of years. And after working at one of their largest high schools in Grand Bahama, I came to New York as a special education teacher and just literally worked my way up the ranks.
Wow. That's an interesting journey, and it doesn't sound like your path was, a straight path. Like there may have been some twists and turns and surprises that may have even blown your own mind in terms of your own journey. Please give us an idea in detail, as much as you can remember, what your earliest classroom experience was like as a student, the positive things and the things that, looking back now, you believe could have been improved.
I remember my teachers. I had an SDA education, although I was born to a teenage mom who struggled to raise me. Um, I was born in a very strict Seventh-day Adventist home, and there was no other option but SDA education. And in spite of the fact that we had no money, I was never in a public school. So I grew up in a setting where teachers loved me, believed in me, and showed me that I can be more than my circumstances.
Mhm.
And those are things that I never forgot. And although my mom was not as educated as other people, at the SDA school, every year they brought a speaker that had a doctoral degree. And every time I saw someone going down the graduation aisle with the bars of velvet on the robe, I would just sit there and picture myself with the bars of velvet. And I said to myself, one day I will wear that robe. I will have a doctorate. And I just kept working and working and working to that dream that I did not see it in my parents, because my father was also a teenager who,
Mm,
that had its own challenges as well. But I saw it in the people that connected in our schools. And hence the reason why when I started my educational journey as an educator, I started also in the SDA school because the teachers had a very warming impact on me. I remember some of them by name. Even when I went to Caribbean Union College, it was the same love
mhm.
and prayer that took me through on those hard days. And I think one of my worst memories was one time when I got a whipping for not being able to solve a math problem. And I could not understand the math. I tried several ways to do it and I could not get it. And every time the teacher came and she checked my notebook and I got it wrong, she would hit, hit, hit. And when I eventually got the problem correct, it was a friend who just handed me her book. I quickly copied the answer while the teacher was not in the room, and then I gave it in and I got it correct. And now, as an educator, I can reflect on that, and I know that when a child gets a problem wrong, they don't get it wrong because they want to. Now I understand that children do well if they can do well. And that's sort of connected to my journey with special education students because I like to qualitatively improve the lives of those that I come in contact with. And I realize this is a population that people sometimes look down on, they're marginalized. And then you have a bunch of parents just crying out for help who feel so hopeless. Remember, a parent never asks a child to come into the world with this difference. This is what life has given to you or what God has placed in your care. And I wanted to find a way to present hope to parents who are struggling with neurodiverse children to understand that there are things that you can do at home. There are things that we can do in the classroom, and I support teachers with that. But there are also things that you can do at home. And when we come together as parents and teachers, that collaborative effort brings success to a child.
Dr. Hislop, you said so much that I have to really ponder because I don't think it an accident that I started off this episode by offering to do the virtual career days, and then you highlighted the importance of connecting with individuals who had been on that career journey before and how important that was to you as a student. But you also highlighted some of the shortcomings that you experienced as a student, some of them traumatic. And I thought about that in preparing to meet with you this week about so many students who, and I grew up in that context with corporal punishment in the Caribbean, but so many students who were beaten, who were physically abused because they couldn't get the right answer or they couldn't assess information. And I wonder how many, sometimes in my quiet moments, how many students who were um, determined to be undisciplined were actually wrestling with other issues that the
Yes,
schools at the time weren't sensitive
yes.
to. But if you could talk to me for a moment about the importance of allowing students to connect with individuals who have gone down the beaten path and are successful, and then highlight for me how parents can properly address the issue and educators even of mistreating students who are dealing with issues that haven't been assessed properly.
Well, there are a couple of things here. And the first thing I want to point out is the research. The research states that any child, no matter what their circumstances,
Mhm.
can become a success by connecting with one adult who believes in them and pours into them. And it just takes one person. But I also want to go back to that old adage that states it takes a village. It truly takes a village. And if we come together and we create strategic programs for our children, the outcomes look different. The reason why we had those outcomes in the Caribbean, it's because no one knew what to do with children like that. So at that time when we were raised, a neurodiverse child was seen as someone who would not integrate well into society, and no one poured into them, and they they never lived to their full potential. But now we realize that highly successful people with disabilities do function in the world. Just last week on Instagram, I saw a student who was autistic and got into Harvard. Like, there are things happening for these students once the parents and the educators know how to navigate the difference that the child brings to the learning experience. And hence the reason why I say it takes a village, because if a parent does not know and a teacher is still struggling, there should be someone who can jump in and help. I believe I see Christianity different to a lot of people. My focus as a Christian is on the love that we show to each other. When the scripture says, and they will know we are Christians by our love, I believe the love that we show to each other, when we go out of our way to help those who are less fortunate, those who cannot give us back anything, but helping people because God has put within us the ability to help and the love to help, I think that makes a big difference. And neurodiverse children are in need of love. Their parents in need of support. And as opposed to just ostracizing them, like when I wrote the book, I said the book is for educators and parents. But then I started writing, what about in the churches? What about when neurodiverse people come into our church? How do we support them? It's not enough to just have someone sign the sermon. That's great. That's a beginning step. But there's more for them that can be done. When the child is sitting there and unable to sit still for 2 hours and disrupting the service, there's a reason for that. And there are things that we can do. So I think it's more knowledge to make the empowerment that we need.
Powerful. And I want to talk about words that most of us don't use often, and neurodivergent. Let's talk about that word because it informs your work, neurodiversity. What is neurodiversity?
Well, in the simplest way of defining it, I can say that neurodiversity means the brain just works differently, right? So the people think, learn, process information, and experience the world differently. It's just a different way of thinking and using the brain. So neurodiversity is actually the concept. Like, you have biodiversity and stuff. Neurodiversity is the concept. But neurodivergent means the individual who is dealing with that concept. So neurodiversity, it's a spectrum of all types of brains, but the neurodivergent person now is somewhere on that spectrum.
Understood, understood. And in your work, you because you have a sensitivity to those terms, and you mentioned something that I was really thinking about it just in the educational setting. But I do find that the faith community is challenged, especially with the example you gave, where, and we can talk about it culturally speaking, we were socialized to sit through services and not move. It the movement was not encouraged. I know some faith communities where people frown when parents have to take kids out to have lunch breaks. um In light of your work and what you've observed in our faith community, what can faith communities do differently to address the fact that people's brains work differently?
I think it starts with wanting to educate yourself on the different types of people that come into the space for worship. And sometimes, there are people who can sit there for an hour and listen to a sermon, and there are people who would not be able to do that. Using multiple modalities, whether on the screen or having someone signing or stuff like that, helps, but also not doing the same thing for a prolonged period of time. Because after a while, no one is getting it, right? When you've been up there for an hour and a half, just hammering, 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 by the first hour, you've lost a large amount of your congregation. Even if they're sitting there and they're saying amen, most of the time, you've lost quite a bit of them. And being sensitive to people who may need to take frequent breaks, who may need a space where they can decompress. I think some students, some children, especially those with ADHD, they just cannot sit through that. And having a room where they can go in and just kind of, be themselves, walk around and shake it out a little bit helps. And not having to sit in that service and have people look over and wonder, why is she acting like that? Or why can't she control her child? Like, let's stop. Like, a parent does not choose for a child to embarrass them. A child does not embarrass a parent because they want to embarrass a parent. Behaviors are symptoms. And whenever we see a child displaying a certain behavior, that's their way of telling us something is going on. And they can't always use the words to describe what is going on, but the behavior tells us something is going on. And when we see a child with a high fever, what do? We know, hey, this child is fighting an infection. I need to take them to the doctor. I need to give them a pill. Well, we need to think of behaviors in a similar manner. When we see a child displaying a certain behavior, something is going on and we need to reach out and try to help. There are functions of behavior. Functions of behavior meaning a child may behave a certain way because they're crying out for attention. When a child lives in a home where the parents are so busy or so depressed or so into their own world that they get no attention. When children go out, they cry out for attention. So yes, they want to go up and jump around in front of church because people will give them some attention. Or yes, they want to act in the school a certain way because they're looking for attention. And I would tell my staff when I sat in the principal role that if a child is looking for attention and they're running and screaming down the hallway and banging on doors, and every time that child displays that behavior, the dean is running, the principal is running, the teacher is running, everyone is running. You have just reinforced the behavior that you want to stop because now the child finally gets the attention that they want. So you cannot give attention to students who are seeking it in that way. Sometimes the function of behavior is escape. I cannot do this math. I don't want everyone in the class to think I'm stupid. So I'm going to flip the desk. I'm going to throw things around. I'm going to run. Because when I behave bad, no one sees my disability. No one sees that I'm struggling with this concept. Some kids act that way because they're in need of tangible things. They're hungry. They're coming in from homes where they had nothing. So I think educating our church leaders on some of these concepts, like why people act that way, would help. Because when you understand the function of behavior, then you know how to change the behavior. And funny it is, I see some of it in even adults in the church because there's no attention at home. So they always have to get on their feet during the board meeting or the business meeting or the Sabbath school lesson. They always have to get there to get that attention. And we need to know that these are things that are correctable and unacceptable.
I want to take you back for a little bit to the student you were when math was difficult and the teacher's response was with a beating. What did that do for you as someone who was in essence crying out for help, as you aptly described? Did it push you away from math entirely? What was your math journey
No, no.
like?
You see, I was socialized to getting a beating when I did not get it right. So it was when I came to America that I learned about corporal punishment and all this trauma that kids talked about. For me, it was not a traumatic experience. I know I did something wrong. I got a beating. I took it and I kept it moving. Math became my favorite subject when I went to high school. And even now, it's one of my favorites. I love math. Although I did a minor in English as well when I went to college, but I do love math. I was not traumatized in any way because I was socialized to that type of life. That if I did something wrong, whether it's at home or at school, I would get a beating and I just keep it moving.
But in your work now, I'm sure that while it's not limited to beatings, I'm sure in your work, addressing the different ways people learn and process, I'm sure there are levels now of corporal punishment that you would amplify are unacceptable in the learning.
Oh, there's no corporal punishment in America. You
Yeah.
will lose your job. You will go to jail. There's no corporal punishment here. As a mother, my two daughters were born right here in America. I've never put my hands on them
Mm.
because now I know that there are other ways that you can discipline children. And I also know that you can change behaviors in positive ways. I went back to school after I had my doctorate. When
Mhm.
I became a principal, I went back to school. I went to Hunter College to learn about the applied behavior analysis program. I enrolled in that certificate program because I saw so many behaviors of children. I felt that they would render me ineffective as a principal because you can't educate them if you can't get them to behave. And I now I understand that their children, you can punish them forever and those behaviors will not change. Because when a child has been exposed to so much hurt, you can't hurt them anymore. So when they have built up that tolerance for pain, you
Mhm.
could beat them, you could give them timeout, you could take away things. It does not change their behavior because they they cannot hurt any more than they're already hurting. So now it's flipping the script to positive reinforcement, finding out what is this child really willing to work for? How can we positively reinforce the behavior that we want to stop? And again, it goes back to my original thing about just loving on that child and providing that child with a way to express themselves and not wanting to disappoint someone who loves them so much. When you show that you want to punish and you don't really care, then the child doesn't care either. But who do you want to disappoint? Someone who you love or someone who you don't know, who you think they don't care about you? So that's the difference now. Now it's okay, I can use positive reinforcement. I can use a reward system, whether it's stars, it's tokens, it's one reinforcement tied to a bigger reinforcement. So at school, you get this, then you go home, you can get this. Like there are ways to change behaviors. And that's what I want to focus on, not necessarily what we were exposed to. That time has passed. Children have now developed a tolerance for pain that those things don't work. Let's try things differently.
Being a Black-owned business extends so much further than making great products. It's about representing the 8 out of 10 Black businesses that failed within the first 18 months of launch. It's about giving hope to the 4% of startups that are founded by Black women. It's about using our influence to affect change in the communities that look like us, and proving to the next generation that no matter the color of your skin, nothing is impossible.
I'm wondering if you could give some encouragement to our parents and the educators who may be listening. There's a meme which says, Caribbean parents don't explain homework; they just repeat the question louder and
Mhm,
louder.
mhm.
And so, there are levels as you've amplified to corporal punishment, be it shouting, and as you indicated in your own experience, even the beatings when the response or the answer isn't accurate. Could you give some encouragement to parents, many of whom are uh, still in a place where they believe that this type of discipline is actually necessary to get the results you need?
Well, I want to flip the thinking
Mhm,
that every time a child displays a behavior, it
mhm.
is something bad that you have to punish. I want the thinking to be a behavior is a signal or a cry for help. If you look at it that way, you will approach it differently. So, yes, the child is constantly screaming and crying. Why? If you were accustomed giving that child attention without the child having to scream and cry, then they won't do that. That's the only way they know to get your attention. But that can be changed. But let me give an example of how you change a behavior like that. When a child is accustomed screaming and kicking in order to get things, in order to change that behavior, you have to allow that child to go through what is called the extinction burst. Meaning, you took the child to the grocery store and the child said, I want this candy. And you said no. And the child throws himself on the floor and starts kicking and screaming in the grocery store because they want that candy. In order to change that behavior, you have to literally stand firm as the parent and see them go through that tantrum and do nothing. Because once you break and give that candy, you have reinforced the behavior that you're trying to stop. So now they go through the extinction burst, they kick and they cry and they scream, and you are embarrassed because everyone in the food store is looking at you and wondering, wow, what a terrible parent. What's going on there? But you know that you are trying to break that. So the child goes through that a couple of times and you do nothing, and eventually the behavior stops because now they realize that's not how I get things. But you, on the other hand, now you still see the child come home and you said, can you clean up your toys? And they do it immediately and you reward them with that candy that they wanted. So now they realize I can get my reward for doing the right things. I don't have to kick and scream and stuff to get it. So it's a matter of understanding how you change the behavior, the function of the behavior, and then the parent being consistent in the approach to change the behavior. When you start changing behavior, consistency is the key. And that's why in my book, I did not just heavily ground the book on research. I wanted a lot of activities for parents to reflect on. So you will see that after you read every chapter, there are questions here for you to answer that would specifically target your child, the behavior your child is displaying, and what you need to do for your child. So here are some strategies. Research can be found on the internet every day, but I wanted to make it as simple as possible so that any parent can just pick it up, get a snapshot of some quick wins, and then focus on their child. A lot of the book focuses on questions that you must answer to get the result for your child.
Let's talk about the book. The book is entitled Beyond the Bell: Raising Neurodivergent Children with Confidence. The title, I believe, is making a point. Beyond the Bell is an important term for educators. Please explain.
Beyond the Bell speaks to what happens after school, right? Sometimes we want everything to be done in the classroom by the teacher. And there's a lot for the teachers to do, but there's so many things you can do at home. Yes, the child is having difficulty in the classroom sitting and paying attention while the teacher is talking. They can't sit still. They can't focus on one thing. Well, how about if at home you put your child on a schedule? You say, okay, we're only going to do one thing at a time. When the child is eating, the television should not be on. When the child is eating, toys should not be played. You don't eat, run around and play, come back and take a spoon. You can train some of these behaviors at home. If a child learns to sit at the table and have a meal, no phone, no television, no toys, you are building perceptual concentration in a child and helping that child to function better in the classroom. You can't have them doing 5 things at home at the same time and expect them to do math only in the classroom. It's a collaborative effort.
Wow, powerful. And then amplify for me, raising neurodivergent children.
I want parents to know that your child can be successful. And I am big about what happens in the classroom. That's my role. Like, I go around to schools and I support with that. Um, I love building sensory rooms in the schools and making sure that kids have a place they can self-regulate and do different things. But even in your home, you can build a calming corner for a child who needs to self-regulate. Eventually, you have to teach your child to self-regulate. Self-regulate means you're going to just walk away from everything that is happening, go in a corner and take a few deep breaths and deal with whatever the emotion is. Emotions are indicators, not dictators. And our children need to learn that. They need to learn when this emotion comes in me and I'm so angry. Do I just run and punch another child? The emotion is saying something is going on with you, but it's not a dictator. It's just an indicator. And we want children to learn how to self-regulate. And it is easier to build strong men than to repair broken ones. If you teach your child to self-regulate from now, they won't become angry men who hit and scream and kill and end up in places where they should not be, because they will know when someone does something that makes you really angry, there is that meta moment between the stimulus and the response. It's just a second, that meta moment that determines whether you're going to end up in trouble or whether you're going to walk away and deal with it in a way that lands the result that you want.
And Dr. Hislop, I know I'm parsing the title, but I know I want you to amplify neurodivergent with confidence.
I want parents to know that they can raise their children knowing what to do to help them to become successful. So you are confident in your approach to raising your child because you have the strategies. You can only be confident in your approach when you know the strategies that work. You cannot be confident in something you don't know about. So here is a tool that will give you some strategies to build your confidence. So as you approach your child, you know how to deal with screen time. You know how to deal with building meaningful relationship. Neurodiverse children struggle with building relationships because people just don't always gravitate to them. So here's a chapter on how to help them build relationships. They need friends too. How to have them build independence, how to have them work with confidence, how to help your child understand who I am and I'm special. I'm not just a regular child. I do different things. I do things differently, but I can find my place in the world. One of the biggest wins for me as a principal was that in the elementary school, I created what was called an industry room, because my school was 95% Title I, meaning most of my kids came from low income families. And some people think because you're not going to Harvard or Yale, there's no hope. But I wanted my children from elementary level to build confidence in who they are and what they can do. So I started a whole chain of industries after I surveyed my kids on what they would like. I had a sewing industry. Kids were learning to sew from in the elementary school. I had podcasting, I had photography, I had hair braiding, I had even DJing. Because guess what? If that's all some of the boys can do for $500-$600 at a party, they don't have to steal or sell drugs to get it. And I think it's providing people with the strategies and the toolkit that builds the confidence.
Powerful, powerful. Now, the parent who is listening, who may or may not have made their own observations that my child or my children, their brains work differently. My wife is an educator, so I'm intrigued by the terms educators use, IEPs and, her charts.
Mhm.
It's a whole other language. But how does a parent get the confirmation that their child is on this track where there is something different needs to be done for them? They're not the conventional quote unquote
Mhm.
student.
Once you observe that something is happening, well, in New York City public schools, I work for the New York City public school system. A parent can literally write a letter and give it to the principal of the school, and all the testing can take place in the school because we do have our school psychologists. We have a team that would do the testing. Some kids may require a neuropsychological evaluation. You can discuss that with your pediatrician. Hey, I see something going on here. I want to know more. Can I get a referral for testing? You can do that. But I think one of the things that we need to stop frowning on is the label. Some parents are more concerned about the label than the success of their child. Oh, I don't want my child labeled. Oh, I don't want my child with an IEP. Well, the time will come when you won't be around to really support that child. And what happens then if the child doesn't get the training that they need? Be open to getting help. Help is available. The child is having difficulty with speech. We have speech therapy, we have occupational therapy, we have physical therapy, we have counseling. Like sometimes kids just need to talk it out. Sometimes kids are going through things that you don't always know. Kids don't always come to parents and share things. And there should always be someone that a child can go to. And if we have that system set up where you can go, you can get the testing in the school, or you can speak to the pediatrician and they can do a referral, and then you see what is going on. Once you identify the problem, you can get the solution. But don't stay in that world where, oh, I'm embarrassed. I don't want anyone to know. That time has passed. Help is available, help is accessible. Take it.
And I think what Dr. Hislop is also suggesting, and it's encouraging to know that um, the label, or as a parent may be perceiving it, it's not designed to say that your child is any less. It's really
No.
designed to get them the support and the resources
Yes.
that could
Yes.
change their trajectory. They're having difficulty in the conventional classroom setting, and you're thinking, my child is less than. Dr. Hislop is suggesting, and it's seasoned with encouragement, that doing the assessment helps them to get the support and the resources that not only they need, but you as a parent, you may be struggling trying to explain math problems or reading comprehension. You're getting the child, the student, the support and the resources that they need. Dr.
Yes.
Club, if you would, for me, and I know we're cutting close to the time, but I want you, if you could, to share something with that person who, and we touched on it early in our conversation, because of beatings and because of labeling and because of suspensions, were maybe discarded by the educational system they were in, and they needed something a little more. They needed what you're offering now in your capacity as an educator. And they may be also, unfortunately, re-traumatizing the children that they are also parents of, because they were never affirmed and they were mislabeled, mistreated, and maybe thrown away by their own school experience. Could you say something to that person now who is hearing our conversation and is thinking, man, I wish I had a Dr. Hislop when I was going through my own journey?
I would say that there is hope. And the hope starts with you. You don't have to stay in a place of hopelessness. You can change the outcomes starting today. Um, no one can change what happened in the past. It's in the past and it's always going to be there, but you can choose how much of that you allow to creep into your future. And reach out for help. Help is available. Like, do not stay in a place where you just cannot see a brighter tomorrow. Help is available. There is something that you were created to do. God gave each of us potential to do something. Don't sit and look at other people's blessings and think there's none for you. There's a blessing for you. There's a place for you in the world. And you can find it first by seeking God, asking Him daily. He says, in all thy ways, acknowledge me, and I will direct your path. Acknowledge Him. Ask God to show you what is the path for you. Ask Him to heal the pain that may have crippled you. He can create in you a new heart, and He can give you a new start. There's that relationship that we have that a non-believer does not have. So a non-believer will say, I'm waiting on the universe to do something for me or to change something for me. We can say that we are waiting on God to do something for us. And because of our faith, we can do so much more. Reach out. I am available on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, all those professional platforms. Reach out, or reach out to attorney Ryan and say, can you connect me with Dr. Hislop? Like, there is help available. And for me, it is a joy when I see a changed outcome, because that's why we are here, to help each other to find our way. God did not put us in positions just for the title and the money. God also put us in positions so that we can help others. And my passion is to help those who are struggling to find their way. You know, funny, you might find this funny, but I recently reached out to someone at the Northeastern Conference, and I said, why don't we start a mentorship program where senior level leaders like myself and others can sign up to be mentors? And then our young people can connect with mentors in careers that they're trying to aspire to. So if someone wants to be a lawyer, they can connect with you. If someone wants to be a teacher, they can connect with a teacher. Like, children don't always listen to their parents, but that one adult who believes in them, who can nurture them, and someone who they can call and tell something that they know their parents would be embarrassed to hear, to pour into them. Why not do ministry a little differently and cater for young people in such a way that there's a trajectory for them towards really meaningful careers? Because we are losing them. We are, but there are things that we can do. And I just believe that we have to just start being more proactive as opposed to being reactive. When something happens, everyone is talking about it. But what are we doing to prevent it from happening? How can we shield them? How can we make them more job ready, more competitive in the world so that they can be successful? All of these things are available, and there is hope. I think my message is there is hope.
Powerful. Dr. Hislop, you touched on it earlier, but I want you to also highlight the ways people can follow you and ways they can access your book that we discussed as well. Please give us your handles and the title of the book. Again, I'm going to highlight it in the notes and on the screen, but tell us about ways we can get the book and follow your journey.
The book, Beyond the Bell, it's available on Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, Ingram Spark, all those platforms. It's also Kindle available. And I am on all social media, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, everything. And I carry my name, Sharian Joseph-Hislop. That's it.
Okay. Powerful, man. So listeners and viewers heard the story of a young student who experienced the highs of education and also had some experiences that could have easily derailed her education journey. And Dr. Hislop is no doubt a living, breathing, walking miracle. I am sure that if you've listened today, you've heard something that could improve not only your own life, but the lives of the children that are yours, who may be having challenges or who may be even considering career paths that are unconventional. I think you've heard enough today to know that the sky is really the limit. We can access some support and some resources that will help our families, that will help our children, and that will help those that we're connected to. Because I think what Dr. Hislop also highlighted is the idea or the principle that the community has to look out for each other, because many of us may not be parents, we may not even have children who are struggling, but there is something we can do in terms of adding support to those we're connected to. And Dr. Hislop, I really want to thank you so much for joining us today on the What a Word podcast. Is there anything else that you want to share finally with our listeners and viewers? Any
Well,
anecdotes?
I just want to say thank you so much for having me.
Mhm.
I really appreciated the opportunity to share with our viewers today. And I want again for us to keep in mind that every child deserves our love and attention, regardless of what they may come to into the world with. And when we see behaviors are symptoms that something needs to be addressed, and we should work feverishly to address it, just as we would when we saw a fever in a child.
Powerful. Thank you so much again, Dr. Hislop. I will provide, she's highlighted her handles. I'll put it on the screen and in the notes so that if you need somebody to come to your civic, your church, whatever entity that you're a part of, be it you're an educator, but you need someone to come and give uh, some support and some resource to your staff. Dr. Hislop has freely provided her information to us, and I will highlight it in the notes of the podcast and on the YouTube as well, so that you'll be able to connect with her so that you can get the help and the support that you need. Dr. Hislop, thank you so much again for joining me as a guest on the Water Word podcast.
Thank you and have a great day.